Welcome to the Voices of a Black Man. Today, I have the luxury of having a conversation with Farad Ali. This project was set as a place, a platform for Black men to be able to just tell their story through their own lens. And society puts them in boxes, puts Black men in boxes. Those boxes are silent, which equals absent, or angry, which equals aggressive. And so through the voices of a Black man, we learn that Black men, one, are not all in one box, two, that they're diverse as every other human being, and three, that they're men who happen to be Black. So today, I welcome Farad Ali to the Voices of a Black Man. Thank you for coming and having a conversation with me. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Miss James. Thank you for asking me to participate. I'm honored and happy to be here.
Excellent. So I'm just going to jump right into it,
Okay.
and just start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm from a small city in New York called Brooklyn, and was raised there. My dad's from New York, Brooklyn. My mother's from South Carolina near Anderson, and they've met. And I lived probably my first 10 or 11 years in that space. Went to public school and private school. Rode the city bus. There was no other buses. Rode the train. Got a chance to grow up in a very diverse community where you had people who were Latino and African American, Haitian, Jewish people, Muslim people, Christian people, Buddhist people. Grew up in a very diverse community near on Parkside Avenue near Prospect Park. Um, my dad worked for a company called IBM. My mom was an entrepreneur, and he made a decision to come to North Carolina to work at RTP, and got a chance to move down here. And interesting enough, North Carolina. Durham was not as diverse as New York, so they took some cultural change and commitment to learning the new culture in the area, and got a chance to go to school here. Then went to Carolina after going to public schools in Durham, and really excited to be here.
So I'm going to ask you a question
Okay.
that is just quite frank.
Okay.
You grew up in New York, where you said you had diverse cultures, and then you moved to North Carolina. How old were you when you moved to North Carolina?
Around 10 and a half.
Okay, all right. So you were old enough to be aware of things. When was the first time in your life that you realized that you were not just a young man, but actually Black?
So I learned that early on in life. I grew up in a very rich in African American history. The people they were my folks were very active in the jazz community. They're very active in the R&B community. Very active in some of the, you would say, employment. I had family members that were in the underground economy, if I may say. So I got introduced to people going to jail and recognizing that was some disparate treatment there, recognizing how you had to carry yourself to make sure that you were able to move through society. So parents taught me early on to be very wary of others and recognizing that I'm not just like any other kid, that the punishment in the world was worse than the punishment at home. So I made sure that you worked hard to stay on the straight and narrow. And for many reasons, right? Because, I had a younger brother. Also, I had cousins, and we all kind of recognized that if we're the next generation for our family. We knew that something else had to happen for us, but we enjoyed being in that culture. And so being in that space, we had a chance to participate in learning jazz and dance and R&B and art. And so I got a chance to grow up in a very artsy culture, also recognizing the challenges of the streets and being around that as well.
Now, so what I'm hearing you say and kind of say is, one, there was a pride in just being who I was from where I was from, and understanding that, but then there was this other side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate, but sometimes we have to code switch to coexist in communities. that people don't accept us for who we are because they have their own perception. And perception is
Code
usually
switch.
code switch. Yeah.
What is code switch? And I know you're looking at me crazy like you know what code switch is.
You
But to
don't
the
act like you
broader
don't know.
audience who may not,
Don't act
they'd be
like
like, code switch, what is that? People are Googling right now. I'm telling you, they're
right.
Googling. What is code switch?
Right. You know, you got to be able to, you know, assimilate into communities where people will know who you are. Right. So I could tell people I've been blessed that I've been able to be a part of the ghetto life or grow up in projects and understanding the impetus of how people can move. And I understand that street culture. And simultaneously, I tell people I know the, you know, I know the streets and the suites. Right? So you got to be able to understand how to navigate in both environments. And I've been blessed to have the ability to have been in both spaces. So, you know, being able to go hang out in the streets are cool, and being able to go out to hang out in the C suites are cool. But simultaneously, I never lose who I am. And you never forget that you're a Black man in any of those communities, and recognizing the challenges. The challenges are different because in some places people understand your challenges and they kind of coalesce and you combine yourselves and how do we work together to build each other. In other places, you're alone. And while you're alone, you have to make sure that you're able to cope so that you can get to whatever the outcome that you're trying to achieve without changing who you are, right? And that's the most important part. Just be who you are always. You know, be true to you and let everybody else adapt.
Yes, that I believe that you're always at the core who you're meant to be, no matter what room you walk into. I think that when you're not you, you kind of are saying that, well, they can't take all of me, or you feel like there's a piece of you that feels like, oh, I won't be accepted if I'm this way or that way, and that's not always the case, not always true.
Right, correct. And it's unfortunate when people are subjugated to the standpoint of feeling like they have to assimilate so much that they become sometimes a part of that community or part of that culture that it's hard to interpret if they really are who they say they are. My dad used to tell me, you know, you tell me you love me, show me. Right? He can understand that. So when people say that they are a part of communities, you want to say, well, how does that represent itself? How do you demonstrate that? How do you communicate that? How do you give to that? And so when people have the perception issue, because, you know, perception is always determined from where you sit, right? Depending on where you sit determines who your perception is and your biases that may come from that. And so recognizing that those are created for everyone and everyone has their prejudices. You realize the walls that you're willing to deal with or approach and kind of work through. And there's other things you go, you know what? I'm not going to be a part of that.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to go back to Code Switch really quick, just to say that I believe that Black people grow up with a majority, and again, not putting everybody in the same box, from a majority, from a culture standpoint, we grow up multilingual before we even look at languages from other countries, because of what you just said about code switching. In our culture, there's certain slang and language that we use. But it could be with your friends, it could be in homes. It's not just, we've had to learn to do it to be in mainstream society. But I want to talk about code switching, even also is something that people do and they don't know that they're doing it, because you make up a language with your friends.
Right.
That could be a type of code switching, right? That only those friends know that language. But then the seriousness of code switching is, as African Americans, as Black people, that we have to make sure that we're pronunciating certain words, or we're speaking a certain way, or have a certain voice when we walk into certain places and things of that nature. So it was interesting for you to talk about that in the beginning. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's important to recognize that it happens, right? I mean, I remember when I came here from New York, I didn't have the same kind of pitch and tone and slang that I have today. And so when I first moved here, I was laughed at because I was saying words very northern style, and so I learned to adapt, listen, pitch, pronunciation, slow down my tone, speak slowly, recognize who I'm speaking with, so they didn't have to feel offended Like I was not just, trying to get over on them, but for make sure they understand my point. And so, in sometimes you have to adapt to your environment. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
code switch is not for you to change who you are. It's for the adaptation to survive. And that
Mm-hmm.
survival may be around employment. It may be around coping in communities, but it doesn't, should not change who you are. And I try to remind people, like, always be true to yourself, because being true to yourself will survive anything else. So if you're not true to yourself, then you're lying to yourself, and you will be tortured from
Yeah, yeah. You'll be tossed all kinds of ways, and you won't even know who you are and where you're going and where you're
that.
coming
Right,
from.
right. That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So you get here at 10 years old. You talked about it being a little bit different
Yeah,
from a culture standpoint. What does that mean?
yeah. I mean, so there were no pizza parlors, there was no Chinese restaurants, there was no bagel shops. So from the food standpoint, you didn't have a lot of that. There was not a whole lot of other culture events that we're celebrating today. Those things weren't around. I remember when you had the first Bimbay Festival and things like
Mm,
that. We used to have block parties, on the drop of a dime, and have DJs out there and have parties and have vendors. So um, the cultural experiences became more enriched. You start seeing more people engaging with one another differently and understanding different groups.
mhm,
We start getting a influx of Hispanic people coming to our community. So you started seeing changes in some restaurants. So you start seeing Tex-Mex and some really great foods coming in the community. And so this evolution of opportunity to be engaged with the food and the culture and the music and different people was exciting, because when I first came here, it was more like just black and white, um, poor and rich, and the classifications of individuals were really based around their social economic status and their color. And that
mm,
was really hard for me because we were not socially economically well off, and I
mhm,
was black with a funny name, and the whole process was really interesting for me and dynamic to be able to cope and to survive, right? And then
mhm,
you don't want to just
mhm.
survive; you want to thrive in communities. So being able to recognize that where you had to place yourself to survive and thrive, and how do you have to feed yourself to be able to
Yeah.
do that and still have authentic relationships that last through time, and people could see your work, and your work will speak for itself. If it was in the classroom, showing that you were academically talented, or if it was on the sports field, or if it's in relationships, always recognizing that you always had to prove yourself to be able to participate.
Mhm. Wow. So you got here at 10 and you've done well for yourself from 10 to now. What are some things between moving to North Carolina, getting acclimated with the different changes,
Yeah.
and growing here to not just live but thrive? What were some of those things kind of throughout you getting to today that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was amazing. I can't believe I accomplished that. I did that, and or those things happen.
Yeah. Well, so one of my favorite, one of the things I live by is recognizing a favorite quote by, I don't know if I think it was Muhammad Ali. That's how I learned it, is that the rent we pay is the service that we do here on earth. Right.
Mm,
So serving other people has been a part of my family's um, commitment for such a long time. I mean, I saw my parents buy my grandmother her house, before they even bought their own home.
wow.
Right. I saw them be gracious with their resources, their time, talents, and treasures, and providing for others, and watching them also get theirs on it. And they were the fertilizer for my brother and I. They provided us the strength, love, and courage to go forward. We never had to worry about them being behind us and pushing us and rebuking us for us to be better. And
Mhm,
so that kind of passion, and fortunately, I'm blessed to still have my parents alive today, and they can still do that. And so having that core was really important for me. Also wanting to succeed, right? Also wanted to raise Jacob's ladder. Being able to go to college as a first generation person, to go to college and to make sure that I'm able to carry on the tradition that will allow for our people, our family, to see that things can happen. And that's, people celebrated that in a way like no other. And so in other communities, it's the standard. But the celebration of going to college and finishing and getting a job and moving out and having your own car and home and getting married was a big deal. And so from that point to today, I've had lots of disappointments. I just got to tell you, the smile is real,
Yes.
but disappointments are also real. I think you find that you grow through your valleys. And I've had many valleys. I've had relationship valleys. I've had employment valleys. I've had situational valleys. I've tried to do things and have lost, and tried to do things and I've won, right? And so when you have those experiences, it's how you approach them, right? And so for me, they're always tools for God to teach me how to be stronger and how to be resilient, because I know He loves me, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So I'm saying I take God's love and I kind of make sure that I show the appreciation for His disciplining of me in a way by being better. So when you have a tough relationship that may go bad or not be successful, you have a choice, right? You can either sob and, be upset and angry, or you can say, wow, what are the great things that happened from that experience? And what should I have learned from that so I could be a better person? Or if you have an employment issue where your boss is saying things about you that may be true or not true, and it adversely affects your ability to take care of your family and your income, and it's not good for you, and you go, wow, I gotta go get another job. And you go, man, what happened there? And so you're like, no, that was another part of the training for my life. So I tell you, I've had lots of great challenges, and I celebrate them. And while I have them, and I continue to have them, and God disciplines His children. One of the things I remember playing sports is when the coach, my coach used to slap my legs all the time when I came to the bench after a timeout. And I realized that in life is a lot like sports. When the coach is beating you up or disciplining you, you must be playing, right? You must be in the game. He's not yelling at the people on the bench. He's like, y'all good? So as long as I'm getting disciplined and challenged and worked on, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the sculpturing, and hopefully that I can use that sculpturing to invest in other people's lives and give it back in my service and my time, talents, and treasures, so that the next generation can be better. I mean, I'm a big proponent of, I want to be maybe first or second or third so someone else can be next. And so I make sure whatever I'm doing in my volunteer life or my spiritual life or my family life is that I'm preparing the grounds for someone else to still be able to plow it. Sometimes people go through life and they burn bridges and torch up lives and torch up relationships. I'm like, that's never good. Find a way to find peace wherever that peace is and build on that peace, because you may have to cross that bridge. And I always tell people, it's interesting. I say, watch the feet you step on. It may be connected to the butt you kiss. And to remind people that this is all short time that we're here.
Yeah. Wow. That is a quote that I'm going to have to steal from you. I will give you credit for it. I will give you, but I love it. I love that quote because it's just so true. It's so true, and it puts things into a perspective, right? It brings it back home and puts into a perspective. Wow. Let's talk about some of the accomplishments that you're like, because of that core. You talked about your mom and dad being the core, and then having that village that started raising you before you moved away. And I'm sure you still had a lot of that village continue on, even though you weren't right in New York. Let's talk about some of the accomplishments that you're proud of, some things that have happened in your life, and just kind of just where you are with them.
Yeah. So for me, it's to be a great father, right? And a great husband and a great son. It's a great volunteer in the community. I'm blessed and honored that I have parents that I could help and be a part of their lives as they come to the back end of it, and they feel like they can count on me. That's a blessing, right? To be able to have parents that as they age, they feel like, hey, they can call you to help them through processes, or go with them to the doctor, or to provide them resource and time. I'm honored. I talk to my parents every day, right? Sometimes for me, sometimes for them, but really it's for each other. I'm honored and blessed to have that. And they give
Mm.
sage wisdom that so much of it is still fertilizing me today. I've got an incredible wife. She's an entrepreneur. She's been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and she's it makes me cry to see, because she's shown me what love really looks like. It's a give and take, and it's a process of investing in one another and celebrating one another and encouraging one another, while supporting one another. And so I'm really happy to have someone to grow old with, and to share great times, right? Great seasons together. And then I've got 4 wonderful children. One is a physician in Atlanta. The other one works for the county, and 2 kids in public schools in Durham School of the Arts. And so they all have great interests, and I try to invest in their success, so that they can be successful. And hopefully I will live a life worthy, that they could be able to benefit from that, and the relationships that I have, to give them a push or a fuel, or to leverage their opportunities to be the best that they can be in whatever they love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's joyful for me. And then investing back into the community, really investing in the lives of people. If I'm working with the YMCA, helping to make sure that we are recognizing that not only are we focusing on the principles of mind, body, and soul, but we're uplifting the community. Or if it's working with the Triangle Community Foundation, making sure that we invest resources into the grassroots nonprofits that are making an impact on the ground that may not have been recognized before, or wherever else I'm volunteering my services. It's really important I tell people, if you're going to be in a place, give it your all. If you're going to be in the room, make sure you're at the table. And if you're at the table, make sure you have a voice, and make sure it's heard, so that you can make sure that your contribution matters. Otherwise, don't be there. Don't waste your time.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about being at the table.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. And then I want to come back to the family. I kind of want to go to being at the table because that's where you ended. But then I want to come back to the family because I have a question for you about the family as well. Being at the table. Now, I know that for a lot of us, we fight to be at the table. Some of us have the opportunity and the luxury to be invited to the table, and others don't have that opportunity or luxury. So being at the table, creating your own table, what's in between?
Ooh. Well, it depends where you're at, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's important to be at the table, if invited or selected to be at the table, to make sure you understand the the gravity of the responsibility. It's not singularly focused. It's you're there for what reason, and to really take some time to absorb that, and to also determine what other resources that you're going to need to be the most effective at the table. Which means you can't lean on your own understanding. You may need to lean on some other people to advise you and encourage you and to enlighten you, so that you can be the most effective at the table. Sometimes you need to be an influencer of the table, where you may not be at the table, but you can provide the food, or you can provide the knowledge to the people who are at the table, so they can be more informed of the decisions that they're making around, if it's your community or something that's affecting you, to make sure you can do that. The last part is to make sure that you have voice in your community, that people can hear your voice, and that it would not, hopefully it doesn't have to resort to violence or protest or arguing, but that people would like to hear your voice, and that your voice matters, and that they can make decisions after hearing your voice. I think that's my big thing, is like, we live in a community, and why'd you ask me this question? We live in a community, because you get me going, we live in a community, that I tell people, I love the quote by Angela Davis that says, we live in a racist society, and that it's not enough to be non-racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's you need to be anti-racist. And so many people in our community don't understand the structural racism that is involved, and they actually participate in it unknowingly and sometimes knowingly, and that adversely affects community. And then they take pieces or small solutions to improve the community. And when I say the community, I mean the community as whole. And those pieces are just shiny objects that are actually distractions for what we really need in our community. And so I'm always a big proponent of listeners that take an assessment of what's really going on can come back and regurgitate what they heard and understand and create a plan and execute on that plan for accomplishing it. And so that's true in government, that's true in business, that's true in nonprofits, and that's also true in relationships. And so taking the time to do that work is important so that we can achieve this kind of shared prosperity. Otherwise, it's shared BS because we're not really taking in the competency of our whole community. And if we trust the people in our community are all wise from whatever position they sit at the table, then we're able to leverage the strength of their wisdom that was God given. God does not discriminate when he gives out wisdom. And so when people feel like others are more wise or have more talents, or I go, no, it doesn't work like that. We are all blessed with wisdom and talents and structures that we need and experiences that will enrich the lives of others. So taking the time to embrace all of that information to make decisions. So if I am at the table, I work hard to make sure that I am consciously aware of those things. I'm able to assess and strategy around how do we improve it, and then create an execution plan that can be measured and I can be held accountable to.
Okay. So is there times where we do need to create our own tables, but we also should lean into tables that we're invited to and be clear about why we're there and what we're contributing, because it's just not about self, is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. I think we should not, I think people should not have to rely on one table to eat or one table to go forward. I think all tables are valuable tables. Our own tables, other tables, whatever the tables are. It's like a potluck, right? It's all great food. We need to take pride in whatever we're cooking, right? Whatever we're culturally cooking, that's important, not just for us, but for us to share. And hopefully people will have the same attitude. It's when we hoard knowledge, information, prosperity, or we limit the access is when you see that there's disparagement or not parity. I tell people, when you really want to deal with the issues of a racist society, it's really like, are you really for parity? And they question, well, what is parity? I mean, that means we all get some. You don't get the most and I don't get the least. We all get in the game and we all get our proportion so that we can feed and nourish our community, not for us, but for the next generation.
Gotcha. So is it being equal? Is it equity? Or is it that it's not a and, but a both, depending on where we're sitting and what we're talking about?
I think it should be as shared as God's gifts to giving us talents, right? We should get as much as everyone should get as much as they can. I believe in the law of abundance. Hell, if you got all the money in the world, you can't spend it. Think about it. I mean, if you've got all you got, you can't even spend it. So why not share? So let's all figure out a way to nourish each other as we go through this process with our time, talents, and resources. I'm not saying that if you've got $100,000 to give me 90, I'm saying I would rather you help me get to 100. But if you want to invest in me to do that, great. Let's get this together. And
Mhm.
that way we can provide and build families and structure. Because the generations that benefit from the work that we do today are enormous. I
Mhm.
mean, that's why we're in this structural society today. These are built from people who were farmers and bankers. They wrote the laws and they built this country for themselves, not being conscientious of the 3/5 or allowing. I mean, we've only been able to vote since 19. I mean, the voting bill passed in 65, 63,
Mhm.
68. I can't remember, but it's not that old. So you start talking around
Mhm.
fairness and equity, it can't be achieved in one transaction. It has to be a holistic, systematic, strategic approach. And I do know that we recognize how to do this in stuff like sports. Okay, we try to get our best talent and the
Mhm.
best talent to win the game. And everyone celebrates, right? The school celebrates, the manager celebrates, the coaches celebrate,
Yeah.
the student body celebrates because there's some pride in that space. We need to start having this kind of oneness. You know, I came up with this term, one Durham, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't about a slogan. It was like, I don't believe that people look at us as one. And if we can first build a structural understanding that we are all one, then everything else you can grow from there. If you try to do it from, it's hard to do it when you're doing it if you're progressive or if you're liberal or if you're black or if you're white or if you're gay or if you're straight. We get those things go away. We're human. And how do we build this one humanity in the work that we do so that we can all prosper to our highest and best? And
Mhm.
that may not be equal, but we still invest for our highest and best.
Mhm. Mhm. I hear what you're saying, and for me, I can hear in that, especially the analogy of the team, the sports team winning. It's their talents were to play the sport.
Yep.
These talents were to be the cheerleaders. These
Yep.
talents were to be in on the sidelines cheering them on. Everyone has their different talents and abilities and places. It doesn't make anyone better than the next one because it takes all of those things to create the
Right.
game. You know,
Correct.
something that we've been talking about right now is in the pandemic of, do you play without fans? And a lot of the athletes are like, but the fans are why we play,
Right.
you know? And
Right.
so it takes all of those pieces are needed. And in a sense, if we use the game, that game kind of symbolizes community,
Correct.
all the different pieces that are moving and needed to make it what it is, to make it the buzz, to make it the hype, to have the excitement and the experience and all the things that you have. um, so that goes back to first, as something you said earlier, of being true to you first.
Yep.
I always say Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. I was like, he got it right when he said, I'm starting with the man in the mirror, you know, to look at myself first and then bring the best version of myself to whatever it is that I'm doing and contributing in. And if everyone kind of did that, the second thing I heard you say, it brought up, is something that I say at the end of this, and I'll say it again, I'll reiterate it at the end, but it's something that my mom taught me, and that was, if you meet people at the human level first, you can always find commonality.
Absolutely.
But because we obviously, there's differences, right? There's, with me and you, there's
Right.
differences. There's differences in the colors we're wearing. You're a man, I'm a woman, short hair, long hair. I mean, we can come up with 20 million differences,
Correct.
just seeing each other in sight, but stopping and seeing the human level first. You know,
Yep.
growing up in the military, and I'm getting to a question. Going to the military, when we were overseas, it didn't matter what color you were because we were all
Right.
Americans. You
That's
know,
right.
in another country, and so it was that own dynamic. Um, so saying that and coming back, just taking what you said, being seeing people at the human level first and being your best version and leaning in where you need to lean in and just give your piece, whatever your piece is. um, no piece is big or small, they're all needed. Growing up and having children, what were some of the things that you feared for them? And we talked a little bit about you growing up and the differences and some things you had to be aware of. And times change from when you grew up to, you know, your children growing up. kind of different times, kind of not different times
You're
at
right.
the same time. What were some of the things that you feared and celebrated with them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I celebrate them who they are, right? I mean, they're God's kids. I get a chance to be their father.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so I'm honored by that. Um, I think the thing that concerns me the most is that they live in an environment where the judgment is high. I mean,
Mm,
we didn't have social media. We didn't have data farms that kept information from way back.
mhm,
We had Polaroid pictures, right, and film, and we wrote notes.
yeah.
Um, and so when I look at this generation, I'm fearful. When you ask me what am I scared about, is that they have these data mines that work against them and for them.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but they also have this artificial intelligence that makes the judgment in many spaces that can cost them. And
mm,
that concerns me because a youthful indiscretion can cause you a felony can cause you not to be able to get an apartment or get a job, and that could have been a simple felony. A speeding ticket could keep your insurance so high that you can never be able to afford a car or insurance. Um, uh, a fight that you may have had, verbal or physical, could be follow you forever. Um, and so a lot of those things, I think, carrying the baggage of the past appears to be, for me, with technology, a burden for the
mhm,
youth of today,
mhm,
and also an opportunity, because if you are able to fill that basket of technology with great things and accolades, you have a source to go back to look at.
mhm,
But
mhm,
if you're a child that's living a life that you want to experience things, to know what's right, what's wrong, and how to build, and maybe give you the experiences to make you even a better person, because your experiences, it's not that you had the experience, it's what did you do from those experiences that make you who you are, um, uh, may inhibit them from growing and developing fully
mhm,
in
mhm,
society, because people may use that against them if they are starting a threat. Even in social media, I mean, people are mean and spiteful and hiding behind technology to to damage other people.
mhm,
Um, and it's creating, I think, some mental health issues, some insecurity about self esteem, and maybe make it in people less engaged to build relationships. And I know in this world that relationships are how things happen. And so to be able to be ill-equipped to manage relationships, to build on them, to use those relationships for the betterment for your family, your life, your community, can be, it can actually take an asset outside or a good player off
mhm,
the court and on the bench.
mm. What is something that you would remind or tell your younger self sitting where you are today?
Um, it gets better. It gets better. I mean, enjoy, live, go hard, go home or go home. I mean,
Mhm, mhm,
your life is short. I mean, if you live to what 70, it's what 25,000 days. I mean, it's life short. You need to go hard, and I tell kids, young adults, if I'm privileged to do a speech for them, is to remind them that you are your own company. You should
mm,
own stock in yourself. Your name. I was talking to one of my coworkers. It's like the front of your jersey may say um, North Carolina, Duke, North Carolina
mhm,
Central.
mhm,
It may say St. Aug, but the back of the jersey says Ali or
mhm,
James. So
mhm,
this jersey is my jersey, and it's my reputation, and I'm going to live and die by my. Now the front of my jersey can say whatever company I'm working for or whatever group I'm representing, and I'm willing to let that be transient. But the back of my jersey says Ali, and that's permanent. And as such, I want to make sure that I live up to that, and I don't want to let that down. You don't want to muddy your name so much that you can't move forward in society and community, and also have the self-esteem to grow and develop. Because I'm a firm believer that every individual is the key to helping other individuals to be better. And if you find
Mm,
yourself so far down and depressed and in despair, and not realizing the humanity of the gift that you've been given from God to invest in someone else, then they're missing that opportunity to be their best self. So it's so important that you raise yourself up and recognizing that you are a leader and a winner, because the investment that you have to make in someone else that you may or may not know may change their lives. And so I don't have time to be down or depressed or angry and bothered, because I have to pour in whatever I have in me into someone else so they can be better to grow.
mm, wow. So that adage of "I am my brother's keeper."
Absolutely. If you
Wow.
like it or not,
Yeah.
right? You are your brother's keeper. And your brothers should hold you accountable when you're falling short of being my brother's keeper. And when you're falling short, you should be rebuked. You should repent, and you should re-engage, right?
Mm,
Not hide
wow.
behind it, or throw up, false promises or some salutations to kind of make people feel good. No, that doesn't work, right? People know, people can read and and um, and look at people in understanding that if they're transparent or not, or ill,
Mm,
or have malice, or ill-informed. And then we need to be able to help one another to be better. But then we also have to be willing to listen, right? And
mm,
that's a big opportunity for us, because you have to be able to listen as well as you're able to talk. You have to be able to listen as much as you're willing to learn. You've got to be willing to listen as much as you're willing to work. Because if you don't listen well, you can't talk well. You can't lead well. You can't work well, because you're not understanding what's needed to be successful. So I try to take time listening and reading and asking questions of people, particularly if I'm responsible or if I'm a leader in a space,
mhm.
because I recognize that whatever I'm pouring in of my time, talent, and treasure is even more valuable, or may have more influence or more of an impact. And you don't want to miss that. I mean, you just don't want to
Mm.
make that mistake.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, let me ask you this. Encounters, obstacles, um, as a black man, that you felt you got a different response than you would have gotten if you weren't a black man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's woof. I mean, that's another show. Um, that's a whole nother show. So
just
sometimes,
just one or two that stick out in your mind that you're like, and encounters, obstacles, successes that you've had, things that you've done in your life that people have been shocked that you did it because you were black, not that you did it because you're Farad.
yeah, I remember when I first went to go work in banking, and I, got an undergraduate degree, got a master's in business, and I was in retail banking, and it was out of, let's say there was 30 bankers, it was three black bankers or four black bankers. And then when I completed my MBA, I said, I want to be a corporate bank, and they said, yeah, we're going to promote you. And I was the only one, and I got no mentorship like the rest of the team got mentorship. And then when something happened bad, they kind of punished me in a way that was interesting. They said, well, we're going to give you more training. I said, okay, no problem. And so I got more training, and then had some successes. And then it was like, well, we don't think that you're good enough. And it was amazing, because I recognized that where I was, where my office was, what the politics were, where the social capital. Well, that's what I learned around social capital. In banking, I learned social capital is as important as um, even money capital, right? Because social capital determines how you advance.
Mm.
And I recognize that's true in most anything in this capitalistic society is who you know, how they know you, what their perception of you, will they trust you? So it was like, it's not only do you do business, who knows you to do business, if they know you and if they trust you and if they like you, right?
Mm.
So being able to understand that environment was really tough for me, but it was one of the best training experiences because I think they trained me so much that it made me a better banker when I left to go to another bank. So then I look back and, one would say, you were mad at that bank. I said, no, it was a bad experience. But guess what? I got all this training, which made me more marketable to go to another bank and make double my salary.
Wow.
Right. And then that next bank valued who I was and gave me some more bandwidth to do more things and then allowed me to go then work for a nonprofit, which moved me from prosperity to passion for being able to give back in my work. And so I got a
Mm.
chance to spend almost 20 years working at a nonprofit, giving back to my community. And, that was the most rewarding experience that I've had. Spending 20 years in a nonprofit focused on improving minority owned businesses and understanding the impacts that they make in communities by hiring people and then they're helping their children to be better off and by investing in that.
Wow.
And now I'm an entrepreneur. I get a chance to still be able to do in my own investment, right, through the earnings that we make and build up so that we can get more opportunities to show the world that we can be good business people as well and still give back to our community. And we can do it in partnership together to improve our community so people can
Mm-hmm.
see people of color in that spaces as well. So um, there's lots of stories of encounters with the law. There's lots of stories with encounters with management. There's lots of stories being in the room at the table where people didn't hear your voice and repeat your suggestion and claim it as their own and get credit
Wow.
for it. Right?
Wow.
There's lots of stories. I can tell you lots of stories. Shared prosperity was
Yeah.
what my campaign slogan was, and all of a sudden, when I lost the race, I saw it come back at me as the city council initiative. I was like, "Whoa, I don't get no love." But then again, I go, "Guess what? God wanted me to pour that into them so that they could have it." So you have
Mm-hmm.
two options. You can say, "Hey, I know I birthed it, but I also know they got the baby. They have to take care of it." But it's awesome
Mm-hmm.
because it still happened. So you get to celebrate. So we still get to celebrate this opportunity. Now we just all have to make it happen.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Yeah. So we have to come back on another time for us to really dive into a lot more because I want to hear some of these stories. But I want to know what's next for Farad.
I don't know. I pray every day to see what's next. I try to wake up with a happy heart, a smiling face, and to be, try to give as much as I can, wherever I can, and to build and develop, recognizing that, as you may have heard me say this before, I'm on the back end of this thing called life. I'm definitely in the third or fourth quarter. I don't know which quarter I'm in, but I'm going to play hard. And
Depends on the day, right?
yeah, it depends
Depends
on
on
the
the
day.
day.
But I'm gonna play hard until the game's over, and then hopefully I'll stop playing, and then I can be a coach. And after being a coach, maybe one day I'll be a owner, and I can invest and create great teams. And then
Yeah.
hopefully I can go meet, my heavenly Father. That's the goal. So He can say, "Well done, son."
So let's talk about that. What's the mark or legacy that you want to leave?
I just want that to say He gave. I gave wherever I was to the best of my ability. I
Mm.
shared. I gave.
Mm.
And that's
Wow.
that makes life worth living.
Yeah. So really quick, rapid fire. It's gonna sound crazy, and you're gonna think
Okay,
I'm coming out of left field, but let's
go,
do it.
let's go, let's
Number
go, let's
one,
go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
favorite song.
Um, oh man, I got a lot of those. Um,
Top three.
Rapper's Delight is
Okay.
my favorite song.
Rapper's delight. Okay. Favorite food.
Beef patties,
Beef patties. Yes.
real beef patties,
Real.
not
Yes. There you go.
real
Real. Yeah.
beef patties.
Um, Favorite movie?
Um, the Ali movie, the first Ali movie, and also I like West Side Story, but the first Ali movie that Muhammad Ali was in.
Is that because of your name?
No, he was a master at giving, talking stuff, and backing it up, and helping the community, and really fighting for what's right. And people, sometimes people look at me as a big mouth and because of my size and my voice. But you know what? If I could back it up, let's bring it. I love that the way he brought it, and still he brought about justice in his life.
Being true to him.
Always. What?
No matter what anybody else thought.
Right. And we have those needs today because we are still fighting places where they want to provide for us but not give to us. And I struggle with that because I'm like, we have enough talent to be successful as people of color and to not provide for me affordable housing, but give me an affordable job. Because with good money, I can buy a house, right? And so we people like to take care of pieces of us, but not take all of us. And I think having a holistic approach to this is really important.
Wow. All right. So I'm going to leave you with some final words of, if there's anything at all that you felt you've never been heard on, never been seen, or you never even said before, but you want society to know, or your community to know, or an individual to know. This is your stage. I'm letting you say whatever it is that's on your heart and you want to put out there.
Love wins.
I know that's loaded.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's love wins. Love wins all the time. It is the victor. Love wins. So the more we practice love, the more we win.
Wow. Thank you, Farad Ali.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you for telling your story through your lens. Thank you to the participants who watched this discussion. We thank you for tuning in today, and we hope you come back for another session. You have heard the voices of a Black man with Farad Ali, and we look forward to see you tomorrow, 12 p.m., same time, same channel. Check us out on www.voicesofablackman for more information, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.